Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. Tonight, we get to have one of my NADP friends, Mr. Dakotah Darko from Hellhound Heights. Dakotah, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
Oh, brother, it's another day in the neighborhood.
Excellent. Most excellent. So, I understand now you have had some eyewitness accounts with Dogman, correct?
Yeah, actually, I've had a lifetime of encounters I've never really discussed. And I called this meeting for the fans at home. I've called this meeting specifically because I wanted Rob to be the first one to have access to these stories. So I hope you guys enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we feel really special having you on here to be the format where you tell your stories for the first time. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Dakotah.
So my name is Dakotah Darko, as everybody will know me as. I'm 26 years old. I'm originally from Missouri. I have two daughters and a lifetime of cryptid hunting experience and encounters with the paranormal alike, both supernatural and of things that are just completely out of explanation altogether.
Okay, well, hey, yeah, we're kind of dealing with the same stuff because I've been, running into that kind of stuff my entire life too. So I know where you are coming on that, I guess I should say. So, well, let's just go ahead and dive into it. So, tell us about your first Dogman encounter. Start from the beginning, be as detailed as you can or as you want, and take it away.
Thanks, Rob. Um, so, for those of you that don't know, I have my own podcast channel, an investigative channel called Hellhound Heights. And the origin of Hellhound Heights is based around my personal experiences. Um, as a kid, I did not have parents. I had great grandparents that raised me. Um, and these great grandparents were very, very educated, wise. Um, However, they were not believers of things that go bump in the night, really, until some of my encounters happened. And I'll just get right into it. See, about 3 or 4 years old, I started becoming able to see people that wasn't there, um, and talking with people that wasn't there. In fact, I had an imaginary friend that I'd have such vivid conversations with that people would question whether I had mental illnesses or maybe I just spent too much time alone. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. Um, the truth is I'm sensitive to things. I'm sensitive specifically to well, at the time, I was especially sensitive to cryptids and but more than anything, spirits, demons, and things like that. Growing up, I had a lot of encounters with the paranormal, seeing people that aren't there, and witnessing kind of memories of people um, that just for me was just it was completely crazy. Um, So I'll jump into it. The very first time I ran into a dog man. So I was, oh, I'd say probably about 3 or 4 years old. And, I'd seen some weird things disappear in the woods when I was out with my grandpa, things I couldn't explain. Well, um, I remember seeing these neon yellow eyes as bright as headlights in the woods more than once throughout my childhood. And that was my first experience with them. And my second experience, which I think is more something I can give more detail on. Um, I was 6 years old, and my grandma remarried to this man that was abusive to me and her. And So I spent my time locked in my room by myself, away from everybody. I was always bullied, beat on, and abused as a child. And to save you some extra details, there was SA acts involved. So I had a very unfortunate time. Now, um, to jump right into the second experience, I started hearing things at night. I knew that there were spirits in the new house that we were living in. And it took me a long time to be able to sleep in my own bed. Well, things took a turn for the worse. I started getting sleep paralysis, and things would visit me during that time, except for I would be awake. It would wake me up and make me be paralyzed completely, to the point I can't do anything but move my eyes. And when I would wake up, I would see things like spirits and such. But there was this one specific time. I remember the day before this happened. I was looking out the window, and I was on the second story. And in front of our house was a park. And I remember I would see things at night run through there, things I would only dream of. And up until this point, I never knew what a werewolf was or a dogman or anything. I had no education on it whatsoever. I never even seen a horror movie that involved anything of the such. In fact, because of my spiritual experiences, I couldn't even watch horror or thrillers or anything that could have too much adrenaline or too much scare, jump scares, anything. Well, I remember looking through that window and I seen something. And then that night passes. And the next day, I know something's not right. That night, I wake up and I'm in bed. I moved at first. I moved my arm and rolled onto my back. And then immediately I was paralyzed. So much so that when I tried to scream for help, I could not. And then it happened. Something came right through the front door, made its way up the stairs. And as it was coming up the stairs, you could hear the weight behind the creak of the stairs. And this thing had to have been 400 or 500 pounds at least. Now, what I can tell you is that once it reached the top of the stairs, it made to the second landing, and there was about 3 or 4 more stairs. And I heard a guttural noise, not like a growl or anything, just kind of like it breathed, a little heavy. And I remember hearing these claws, and they were dragging along the panel wood on the wall, and it reached my bedroom. And it was cold enough upstairs at the time that I could see my own breath if I wasn't, completely wrapped in my blankets and all warm and cozy. Well, I seen something. My doorway was cracked open. I seen this long breath, and it almost looked like someone hit a vape before vapes were even created. And there was just this long, extensive breath that went across my doorway. And that truly terrified me. I thought finally the demons had, made a physical form and they were coming after me. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The threat that I was facing was so much worse than that. All of a sudden, after that breath stopped, it's like it was breathing so slow that the space between its breaths must have been 30 seconds. And in that 30 seconds, something grabbed and wrapped its hand around the door frame and the door jamb of my doorway. And when I tell you, when I seen it as it wrapped its claws slowly around the door frame, it made me piss myself, just to be straight honest. Um, and I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The only thing I could do was close my eyes. And I closed my eyes after it fully came around that corner. Um, its hand at least. Um, its hand had wrapped around there, and I'd seen it. It was furry. It was humanoid, 5 digits, thumbs, talons. Um, even had palms that looked very similar to human beings. So later, after I closed my eyes, I locked them down for hours. By this time, I could feel something breathing across my chest and neck. And that startled me so bad, I started vibrating across the bed a little bit. And so I had this just incredible experience where it came into my room and it sat there and it made a couple of guttural sounds every now and then, and it was almost like when I would get that chance to move and I'd feel myself start to come free, I wouldn't because of how much fear. And in doing so, um, things made a tragic turn. It stayed with me all night until about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I remember I could feel its hair brush against me, across my neck, across my chest, across my face. Um, and there was this smell. And you can just tell that it was wrong. It was wrong. It was sulfuric. It was death. There was blood. You could smell individual body parts on this thing because of the decay. Um, and I'm not talking about the creature being decayed. I'm talking about whatever it was eating before it came to see me. And how it knew I knew about it before I knew about it, I don't know. And that's the best way to explain it to you because I didn't know what werewolves and dogmen were. I didn't know what Bigfoot was. I didn't know about Mothman. I didn't know about Loch Ness. I didn't know about any of these things. But when I tell you, when I froze so hard that I'm pretty sure it gave me some muscular damage because I was locked solid. Um, and it takes another turn. It disappears at some point silently. And I mean silently. There wasn't so much as a slight wind gust come off of this thing when it disappeared. And when it disappeared, I never heard the front door close. And this was a metal door, mind you, and there was a glass screen door on the other side of it. There's no way you can't hear it. This thing left my house without a singular sound. And it couldn't have been more than 45 minutes later. My grandma comes upstairs to wake me up, and I have literally urinated to the point that my entire queen size mattress was completely, and I mean completely, just soaked all the way to the box springs. When my grandma found me, she seen the fear in my eyes and how I almost refused to blink. Because when I finally got my eyes open, I was so scared I couldn't close them again. For 45 minutes, I felt this as it just continued to keep its hold on me and locked me to the bed. And as time goes on, my grandma shows up and she sees that look in my eye and she starts trying to call out to me and tell me to get up. It's time for school. She gets my clothes out. Well, she doesn't realize right offhand that there's that look in my eye, that I'm seriously horrified. And when she turns back around to sit on the end of my bed, she notices I can't move or speak. Now, I don't know if that's happened to anybody at home, but that's one of the most terrifying experiences you can have when you're completely defenseless, when you know that something is there to take you. But this time it didn't take me. And my grandma, she grabbed on my ankle and started to make some feeling come back. And she noticed how stiff I was. So she grabbed onto my shoulders and my wrists and she pulled me up. And in doing so, it kind of broke the spell. And when I tell you that I was laying there for what seemed like days before she came upstairs. I can't even begin to imagine how much time felt like it had passed. But when she had got me up off of that bed and set me up, she noticed, I'm completely soaked, not only in sweat, but urine. I'm horrified. I won't speak. I can't speak. My jaw's locked, and I'm trembling so bad that I'm silently crying. But to the point where if you seen a child crying like this, you would know right offhand that something is so wrong. Something is so wrong. In fact, it's so wrong that if it was to happen to my child, I would not let her leave my sight. Um, and she began to talk to me, and eventually I was able to speak, and I told her about this wolf thing that it came into my room and had stood over me, had wrapped its hand around the doorway, even brushed its fur against me. And when I tried to play dead for a little bit, it almost laughed at me. There was this almost like a chuckle. And I told her about all of it, and she was horrified. She went downstairs and told her husband, I'm not making him go to school today. Whatever happened to that boy, it seriously, it seriously screwed him up. And it took hours to get me downstairs. It took hours to get me to walk right. It took hours to get me into the kitchen just so that I could have breakfast. Mind you, we didn't have a normal family where we had a normal set out made breakfast every day, 3 meals a day. No, it wasn't like that. To an extent, I fended for myself. Um, so when I got down there, my grandma made my bowl of cereal and I just stared at it for 45 minutes, remembering everything I'd seen, heard, and smelt the night before, just hours before. By the time she got me downstairs, it went from being 6 a.m. to probably 10 a.m. And I wasn't right for weeks. And that is the conclusion of my second encounter.
Okay, well, first of all, I am so sorry that you had to go through all of that as a kid. Um, yeah, words can't even express. I'm sorry that you went through not only that experience but the other experiences as well. Um, that being said, in your first Dogman encounter where you talked about being 3 or 4 and in the woods with your grandpa or great grandpa, I'm sorry, you mentioned neon yellow eyes. How often did that happen? Was that a one time thing or did that happen more than once?
Growing up in central Missouri, 45 minutes from Kansas City, Missouri, in a county called Ray County. I grew up in a town called Hardin, Missouri, and we were right on the Missouri River. And there were some things that, you just have to understand that growing up, there's things that people can't explain. And this is just as rural as it would be in Kentucky. Maybe some less trees, because it's mainly a lot of farmland surrounding the area. However, I did run into these eyes more than once. Um, and in my third encounter, I'll really get into what I seen with the eyes. Something that
Okay.
spooked me and my great grandpa to the core.
Okay. So when you say you saw the neon yellow eyes, how did you know that those were Dogman? Is that kind of after the fact you figured out that they were Dogman or they were werewolves or
So it took, well, let's see, let me explain. I always had a fear of werewolves. Once 2008 came around, Rise of the Lycans, the Underworld movie came out. That's when I got my real fear because for something, it seemed so familiar.
Mhm.
Um, and at that time, um, I was horrified. This was something that caught me completely off guard. Um, And 2019 came around and I started following the Mr. Ballin podcast on his very first episodes. Maybe it was 2018. And I remember the Palmyra Werewolves episode when he very first aired it. The first edit of it was truly horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you find now is different. And then I started following What Lurks Beneath. And those two taught me about attributes of the Dogman that I wasn't aware of. And when I finally put these things together, I knew that's what it was. Because not only did I see eyes, I seen pointy ears, like that you would see of a Doberman, or something of that nature, something truly horrifying.
Right.
And when I seen the ears, I knew it was canid. There was no doubt about it. Um, so it took me quite a few years to put together that was Dogman.
So let me ask you this: with the second one, whenever it came into your room, why do you have the feeling that it came to take you? The reason I'm asking this is because it didn't. Even though it came in there and it terrified you, and maybe it did, knowingly do that and get some kind of thrill out of it or whatever, it didn't take you. It didn't harm you. It didn't hurt you at all physically. So why did you get the feeling that it came to take you?
Well, being as sensitive as I was as a child, um, there were many things I could pick up on, um, in my mind, and I'm not going to go out there and say I'm psychic or nothing like that because I'm not.
Hmm.
But what I can tell you is that when it started creeping up the stairs, I could feel its presence and I could feel this intense feeling. I mean, like no other, of it was there to do harm. And that's what it originally came there for. When I realized that it was making a bigger impact on me in my mind with my eyes closed, it kind of, in a way, got off on it. And I could feel it. I could feel everything it was feeling. And when you're standing that close to a dog man or sitting that close to a dog man, your mind becomes so much more aware of things that you've never become aware of before. And you can feel emotions of what it's feeling at times if it allows you to. And this was one of those cases. It definitely was there to take me. And I knew it. I knew it from the second it started coming up the stairs and I heard it and it woke me up. I knew that's what it was there for. It was there to cause me harm. It was there to eat me. And there was no doubt about it in my mind, even at that young age, that that's exactly what it was. It was there to eat me. And when it realized it couldn't get away with eating me because there were so many people in the house, it found a way to still get to me. And in the process of that, um, you know, it was just, I don't really know how to describe to you really, um,
That's okay.
what it, what the emotional atmosphere was. And you can feel the vindictiveness of it, the apex predator. You can feel all of that. Um, you know, and I really don't know how else to answer that, Rob, to be honest with you.
That's okay. You answered just fine. Let me ask this too. Why you? Why do you think it chose to enter your house, come up your stairs, creep through your door, and get on the bed with you? Why you?
Truthfully, I'd love to know the exact answer, but I can't answer that. What I can say is that it had seen me watching it through the window for several different occasions before it came into my room. And when I say that I would watch it, I mean there'd be times at night where I'd wake up and something would draw me to that window.
Hmm.
And being 20, 25 feet off the ground, you know, um, it feels like a safe spot. until you realize that what you're looking at 50, maybe 50 feet to 100 feet from your house is actually looking right back into your soul. It's like at that moment, I knew that I was now a target, and I became fearful. Um, because, at this point, I'm at risk. I'm not just at risk. My life's on the line. I'm a small appetizer for this thing. Maybe it's lunch.
Right.
Um, and then once you feel the presence of it there, you realize how small you really are.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to let you go ahead and dive into the third instance. So if you want to go ahead, continue.
My third occurrence, my third encounter. Um, so there was this trailer house that my great grandpa was living in, and he had this window that we had built a shed on the other side of the house, and we built this wall connecting it to the add-on bedroom. Well, in between the shed and the house was this space where he kept all of his metal and other things, to keep it safe. We were scrappers. I've been a scrapper my whole life. Um, and people that don't know what that means that we burn copper wire and things like that, collect it up, and then we take it to a recycler. And the recycler will pay us for cleaning it, burning it, rounding it up, the whole 9 yards. And there's different qualities, different scales on which you get paid. Um, anyway, um, there was this window, and it was in the living room, and it was this one window I was always so curious about my whole life. And when I got to be, I was probably 10 or 11. I finally took the plastic wrap off the window. I took all of the stuff that was in between the layers of glass out because I wanted to be able to see back there. Someone had been stealing our metal. And, we're hillbilly style, where we defend our own. By this time, I was already really familiar with weapons. Um, and at that early age, I was actually able to clean and take apart weapons. I was very educated, very educated. I had a lot of trigger discipline, things like that. I was taught the old ways and the best ways, and especially with patience. One night, this sound woke me up, and I slept on the couch right there by my great grandpa, and he slept in one of those, electric recliner chairs. And something woke me up, and it jolted the entire house. Mind you, that this trailer house is not just sitting there. The tires have been taken off. It has been suspended. It has hurricane straps holding it down. There's no way that even a tornado could move this house unless it tore it to pieces. Okay. Now, I heard something, and then I seen something black and furry move past the window. Mind you, the trailer suspended enough that the bottom of the window is over 7 feet in height. Um, and what I had seen was easily over a foot and a half higher than that. Um, and at first I thought it was a giant dog standing on his hind legs, trying to get in and, get some food, get some lovin's. But I was wrong again. This time, there was the yellow eyes again. And I realized when I got right up on the window that what I was seeing was not a reflection. I had to put my face against the window and, put my hands cupping my eyes just to be able to see it. But when I seen it, it was right in front of my face. It could have killed me right then and there. It could have took me. It could have done anything it wanted to. We were both vulnerable. And so, when I would stay with my great grandpa, I would always, check on the weapons, make sure that they're loaded properly, the safes are engaged, and things like that. And I was down there quite often because, truthfully, I hated my home environment. Um, but then something really weird happened. The yellow eyes disappeared, and then something bigger came back. even taller than that. Every bit of 9 foot. I went to the bathroom. I came back, and then it shows up while I'm watching out the window for about 20 minutes. It shows up, and it walks right in front of the window, and it has these fluorescent, angry, just crimson red eyes, and um, it just stared me, and I could feel this guttural growl through the hollow walls and floor of the trailer house. And it just stared at me. And I don't know how much time passed, and I don't remember it leaving. I don't remember falling back asleep. There's a giant memory lapse. And as for the third encounter, that's all really I can say about it, other than the fact that when investigating it in the next coming weeks, um, I'd seen a couple of things run off into the bushes. My aunt that lived next door had like a little vineyard out back for grapevines. And, after time of not taking care of it, it gets overgrown. Um, so my aunt wouldn't like it when I would hunt back there unless I was taking care of the squirrels, and stuff like that. Well, I remember me and my cousin Johnny, I told him about it. My grandpa had woken up during the red eyes at the window and had seen it and had drawn his weapon. And, being 60 something years old at the time, it was not a fast draw. He had to have time to get to his weapon and then to draw it from there. And, um, in the next coming weeks, when me and Johnny would investigate, I'd set traps, sound traps like bottles, cans, things like that, because I wanted to catch it red-handed. It was getting to the point it was starting to irritate me because I couldn't tell if it was between who was stealing our metal and stealing our tools, or if it was something that wasn't that at all. In fact, me and Johnny set up those traps, and there was been multiple times where I had woke up to hear those traps be rattled off, and I would go check it out, and there'd be nothing there. Occasionally, I'd see a black flash, disappear into the night, but that would be it. And as far as my third encounter, that's all I can really say.
Do you have any inkling that maybe the thing that you saw on your third encounter is the same thing as what you saw on your second encounter? That it was the same one or part of the same group? That, the same entity as what you encountered in your bedroom? Did that ever cross your mind?
Well, to put it frankly, I think that this was a small pack of them. Maybe they hunted independently, but there were times that I feel like they would investigate together. And I don't think that there was more than three of them. And truthfully, I don't know if there was more than two, but I can verify that there was at least two. I cannot verify that they are the same creature. But what I can say is that um, it was getting familiar with me, and it had been familiar with me when it had come into my room. I have a feeling that, since I was one of the only curious kids in town, I'd go to places and investigate things and look at things and go try to find, secret hidden treasure here or secret hidden treasure there on the outskirts of town. I think when I went out there, I ended up walking right into its territory because multiple times me and Johnny both got surrounded and ran out of wood lines, tree lines. Um, and there'd just be multiple times when we'd run into some things. And he was a big boy. For 12 years old, he was 6'3", 220 pounds. He was a big boy. Um,
That is a
you
big boy
know,
for 12 years old, yeah.
and we're all corn fed. So especially Johnny. Johnny's really corn fed, and even to this day, he is a monster of a man. He always has been. Um, and I truly think that it made him urinate himself more than one occasion. Um, but I do think that it was familiar with me, and I do think that there is a possibility that they are in fact linked.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like there's a reoccurring theme almost that pops up. So, did have you had any other encounters other than these three?
Yes, I have. And the next
Okay,
encounter I want to talk about is my most horrific one, the one where it really almost became a full bloodshed warfare.
go right ahead.
Okay, so in 2011 or 2012, that's about 12 years old, um, somewhere in that area. Um, my grandma had brought me back down to my grandpa's so that I can go inside, spend the night with him. Well, I had been having problems with the spirits at the house and they had freaked me out really bad, really, really bad. And so my most horrific encounter starts like this. We pull up into the driveway and I just immediately I knew something's wrong. And I'm talking to my grandma actually about Dogman um, before I really knew what it was. And, being, probably 9:30 at night, it was really dark out there. It's a town of 500 people, so you can see stars. Well, this night, the entire sky was covered in clouds, and I'm talking thick, dense, and the atmosphere was electrifying. And by electrifying, I mean so much so that there's lightning crackling everywhere. And in fact, I watched it touch about 50 feet behind our property. See, what happened was, as I got out of the car, I called my grandpa ahead of time. I told him, get the shotgun, come to the door, something's wrong. I just know it. I just know it. Trust me. He didn't answer. Well, I mean, he didn't come to the door. So I called him again. I was like, come on, Pops. I'm really serious. Something's going to happen as soon as I get out there. I need you there. And he started to prep his weapon. My grandma was already horrified because she already sees how I'm acting and I'm able to pick up on something going on that she cannot. So, of course, she's being absolutely traumatized by this point. And I'm really starting to freak out. Tears are starting to come. I know something's wrong. I got out of the car and I made my first approach to try to reach the side door to go into the house. And when I did, the whole sky lit up in lightning. And there's this big cottonwood tree at the end of the property, right before the train tracks. And it stood probably 120 feet tall, one of the biggest cottonwood trees I've ever seen in my life. And some of the branches on it were, probably 3 foot in diameter. And these were big, big limbs. Some of them were up to 50 feet in length. Um, and I seen something, and I don't remember exactly what I seen, but I seen something, and it startled me to all to hell. I ran back to the car, got my flip phone out, started calling my grandpa. I said, "It's here, it's here, it's here. Uh, Something's gonna happen." And he came to the door. I made my second approach, and that's when I seen it. Truly, this time, this crack of lightning lit the ground up about 50 feet behind the cottonwood tree on the other side of the tracks into this field. It just boom blew it up. Um, and as it did, I seen something about probably about 80 to 90 feet up in the air on this big old limb, about 3 foot in diameter, about probably 30 foot long. Um, Huge limb. But what was even bigger than that was what was sitting on top of it. I've never seen anything with so much muscle tone, so much purity to its nature, something so atmospherically changing that not only did the lightning add electricity to the air, but you could just feel the electricity coming off the air from that. And that was a problem because now I'm in danger and I'm unarmed. My grandpa has not made it to the door just yet. I run back to the car, tell my grandma what happened. I call him one more time. He's walking up on the door as it's going on. And I remember I made my third approach, and this time I knew it was all balls, no glory. And another crack of lightning hit, and this time it hit in three at the same time. And when it did, it lit the whole tree up. And that's when the branch dropped. At first, I'd seen it swaying with such unnatural sway from a branch that huge. I mean, it's the size of a tree on its own. And 3 foot in diameter, that's not something that bends easily. It looked like it had 20 or 30,000 pounds of torque being pulled on it. And I mean, it's just swaying so hard. And the wind ain't blowing that hard. It's really not. It maybe had 10, 15 mile an hour wind. This thing was blowing like we had 115 mile an hour wind. Okay. And when I seen it sitting up there, I mean, it's even got me horrified in this moment. I'm surprised I'm able to say this without tears, because it looked at me and I seen these bright, bright yellow eyes lock right on to me, and I knew I was a dead man from that very moment. I knew that if it came out of this tree, I was going to die. There was no doubt about it. All three of us were probably going to die. Well, my grandma was still waiting in the driveway, and she sees me stop dead. And then she sees the branch fall. But that's all she could see. On the base of that branch was something so large, it must have weighed 800 pounds. It was so ripped, and its muscles were so dense and so wide at the shoulders. It probably was 5 foot at the shoulders, from the tip of the shoulder to the other tip of the shoulder. It had a collarbone like I've never seen before. And in the flashes of lightning, I got a pretty good view of it. And some of those lightning strikes would hit in multiple occurrences. We were having a hell of an electrical storm. And I mean, when I seen this thing looking at me, I fucking, pardon my French, I froze. I froze, and I could still remember. I'm almost sweating on just remembering how I felt in that moment and seeing it all over again. Um, and that branch came down. I'm about 30 foot from the front door. I have to go upstairs, and do so much to get inside the door. And that branch came to the ground. And when I mean it hit the ground so hard, it almost knocked me off my feet. I never felt something that big hitting the ground, but it wasn't just that branch hitting the ground. It was what was ever with it. And from about 75 feet away, I could feel through the ground how hard it hit. And as soon as that branch touched the ground, this thing took off in a dead sprint. And from what it looked like it was about to flank me from my left side, coming up around the shed and everything else to get right up on me. And my grandma sees me turn around, and there are tears rolling from my face. And I mean, I just took off right at that door. And about that time, my grandpa opens the door, and I almost knock him down running through this door. I grabbed the shotgun from his hands. I hit the door. I hit the deadbolt, the doorknob. I started putting everything in the house in front of that door, in front of the windows. I was so purely scared that it was coming for us all. And I knew that what I was feeling was pure evil and apex in nature. And this thing was coming for us. I had no doubt about it. And that night, well, let me back this up. So after I got in the house, barricaded and everything, got the gun, I started searching the windows, just barely peeking. I put the barrel of the shotgun there first, because there ain't no way in hell I'm going to let this thing come in and take my grandpa from me. And that was my mission, was to keep him safe. My grandpa was my only father figure. And, he's my great grandpa at that. He was my father figure. He was one of my best friends. and he meant too much to me. And I used to have night terrors about things taking him from me. And it'd be so real, man. I'd wake up, I'd urinate myself. Even as I got older, there was a time it still happened um, at 12, and I think I did it one more at 19, right before he passed away. I had another one of those occurrences. Um, but I gotta say that once we were in the house, I called my grandma in the driveway. I said, "You got to get the hell out of here now. I mean, go. I mean, punch that pedal. Get as far the fuck away from here. Pardon my French again. Sorry. Um, as possible." Um, I didn't want it to get her, and I could only provide cover from the window of the front of the house. Um, and I can only cover so far. I only have so much range because I know that what's inside the shotgun is birdshot, not buckshot, not a slug. I can only cover her for so much time. She drove away, and I was thanking God for that moment. And my grandpa was like, "What is going on?" I was like, "Look outside." So he had installed, when I was 4, he had installed this giant glass window in the wall in the hallway. So we went to that window. And I cleared it first to make sure it wasn't just waiting there for us. After I cleared it, I said, "You see that branch out there? Look at the base of it. Do you see where all that bark is gone and it's just shredded?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Tell me that doesn't look like extremely large claw marks, because I seen something come down with that tree, and I seen it, and it horrified me." And I'm in tears, while I'm talking to him. I'm just completely baffled. I'm destroyed thinking that this thing's coming from my grandpa. And and being such a protective child, I just didn't know how to handle it. Um, because I knew that if it could take him, it could take me in a heartbeat, and I knew that if we worked together, we might survive the night. Later that night, something started beating on the side of the house. Me and him bunched up, side by side, weapons drawn, sidearms drawn. Um, I had laid out every weapon, fully loaded them, everything. I was ready for hell. I was ready for it to come through the wall at any time and just start ripping us to pieces. But it didn't. But what it did do is it beat on that wall, and it scared the hell out of both of us. And I never seen this man who was who served in Vietnam. I never seen him get scared at nothing. But that night he was horrified. So horrified he couldn't even talk about it. And with his old schoolness, being born in the 40s, he was taught how to handle things a lot differently. And I gotta say, Rob, I never seen that man scared. But when I did, that put the fear of God himself in me. What's worse is what happens next. There are claws running along our brand new vinyl siding we put along the backside of the trailer that's facing the shed, right where that window is. That window where I first seen the eyes. Something ran its claws against our new vinyl siding and destroyed it. And I'm talking, it destroyed it. It cracked it all to pieces. There were pieces missing. Looked like they completely got ripped off the wall itself. Just destroyed. There was nothing more than I could explain than this thing was purposely doing this to irritate us, to scare us from the inside of the house. Pardon me. From the inside of the house. And it wanted that sound, and it wanted that to haunt us, and it wanted us to know that it's making its way in slowly. Well, when I looked out that window that night, it was standing there, and it seemed like it grew in the couple years between the last time I had seen it. And I mean, I had seen glimpses of it here and there, but not like this. I was face to face with a 9-foot, just humongous bipedal wolf, and its intelligence in its eyes was reading me and every emotion and body language I had. My grandpa walked up to that same window next to me, and we got to the point we were both so horrified we could not draw our weapon. We just stared. And I remember him saying, "We got to push something against this window." So we did. I don't remember what it was, but we pushed something real heavy against that window. And I just laid on that thing, just trying to keep it steady, just in case it would start to try to come in. But I remember something before I barricaded it. It smiled, and it knew I was horrified. It knew I was horrified, and that I don't have a big enough caliber weapon that I can grab at this exact moment to protect myself. The biggest thing we had was a 30-06 and a 7.62 Mosin Nagant. And those are two pretty decent sized weapons. However, I don't think unless I got a headshot, it would have done anything. And I knew it in that moment. I knew that 12 gauge wasn't going to do nothing. There's nothing we could do until I could get to that rifle. So we barricaded. And he stayed up all night watching over me. And we listened to this thing all night, jump on the roof, and the roof was metal. And you can just hear it up there, just prancing and dancing. It sounded like it was tap dancing up there and clawing at every little screw and everything it could do to cause us harm. The next day, I investigated the outside where it had broke the siding and discovered the siding. But I also noticed that we had this 55-gallon metal drum of used motor oil. You know, we didn't want to induce it into the ground and not be able to grow our 75-foot by 100-foot garden. So we'd always dump it in this barrel. That thing was tipped over, and there was a dent in it so big it looks like, I don't know, almost like a truck hit it. And it never cracked open, but it took about 4 or 5 of us to get it set upright again. And I mean, by this time, it's probably 600 pounds. And I was a strong boy for being that young, but I wasn't nowhere near that strong. It took me, Johnny, and my grandpa, and I think my Uncle Bill to get it back up. And that's when I noticed some other things. There were some hollow weed type giant weeds that would grow back there. And I mean, they'd be probably 13 foot. I don't know really what they are. Kind of looks like ragweed or horseweed. And it might have been horseweed. But it had snapped them off in spots where I couldn't reach. My grandpa couldn't reach, and he was a pretty big dude. He couldn't reach. It snapped things off above 9 foot off the ground. Almost like it was just clearing its way just so it could stick its head right in that window. So with that happening in the next couple of weeks, we started barricading that window from the outside to make sure that nothing could get close enough to enter if it tried. So we had 8 feet of stuff up against that window, and eventually we resealed the window from the inside. It was too much risk. At any point, we could become the victims, the next meal for this thing. But that's all I'm going to talk about on that encounter. And I have one more that I would really like to discuss with Rob, but I want to see what you got to say, Rob.
You were really tormented by these things. I've got to ask, generally I would ask this towards the end, but I think it's worth asking now. What do you think these dogmen were? Do you think they were flesh and blood? Do you think they were more paranormal? Because I mean, as someone who's more science minded and involved in cryptozoology for years, cryptozoology is about animals. It's about flesh and blood animals. That's what cryptozoology is. At its heart, it's a form of zoology and biology. So we're always looking for flesh and blood animals that are out there, and that's true with Bigfoot, Dogman, uh, Tasmanian tigers, whatever. And then whenever you get into the paranormal and you get into what we refer to as entities, things get a little bit different. So, I mean, Are do you feel like you were dealing with something that was flesh and blood, something that was an entity, or something maybe that was somewhere between both?
Well, Rob, personally, that's one of my favorite questions. Not from my own encounters usually, but that's one of my favorite questions because solely I believe that Dogman is flesh and blood. But I
Okay.
do think that it has knowledge, intellect, the ability to read things like your emotions, body languages, and tell basically where your mindset is when it finds you. So, for example, when it was looking at me through the window the first time, it could tell I was horrified, you know. Um, and I wasn't even doing no crazy facial expression. I wasn't gasping, nothing. I was just locked dead, staring at it. And I gotta say, I do believe that it is absolutely a physical being, and I do think that they are just so intelligent. It resembles supernatural things because
Okay.
they have the speed to be able to run away from you at beyond anything that you've ever seen before, faster than a cheetah all day. But I think that the way that it studies its victims, its targets, it's almost unworldly, but I know that it's physical. It's physical. There's no way it's not physical because I felt it. I felt the hair of the dog man on me, and
Mhm.
no part of me thinks that that was an entity.
Okay. So generally, I stay away from this next question because, as you and I both know, being members of the NADP, we really don't have enough data so far to really make a lot of leaps and guesses and hypotheses on things like the origins of these things. Although tons of people have different theories on where these things come from the Nephilim to demonic to government conspiracies to aliens to everything under the sun. So, not making light of that, just there's a ton of different theories out there. I have a few of my own, but I mean, what where do you think these flesh and blood, intelligent, malicious, canine like, demonic almost beings come from?
Well, I think they've
And
always been here.
there's no wrong answer. Let me interrupt you enough to say there's no wrong answer because I don't think there's a right answer out there.
Well, truthfully, Rob, we've discussed this, quite a bit in our NADP group um, about the physicality of it. I do 100% believe that these things have always been here, at least in some form. Maybe they wasn't originally what they are now. Maybe they started as a dire wolf or something of that sort. And as time grew on, we've seen, well, let's put it like this in cryptozoology and zoology alike, we've seen creatures start in the water and end up on the land. We've seen creatures start on the land and end up in the water. There's no
Hmm.
reason to think that somewhere along the line, they didn't start to adapt and improvise, almost like a soldier. And I can't say that every single Dogman encounter I had was malicious because the next one we'll
Hmm.
talk about and finish it out with is one that I caught on camera. And
Hmm.
for those who don't know at home, I caught a 110-pound pit bull get attacked by Dogman about 2 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on camera.
Hmm.
Um, and what you see in the video is that the dog turns its back to the bush and it gets sucked in. And we'll elaborate a little bit more on that in a little bit. But
Yeah, you've actually got that on your channel, right?
that is correct. I do have
Okay.
that, and then I have a follow-up interview that I had done with a past NADP member that is no longer allowed to be a part of the group. I had followed up
Hmm.
with.
Right, right. So yeah, so if anybody wants to see the footage that Dakotah's talking about, it's on his channel, so it should be pretty easy to find. Um, but yeah, where you talk about evolution and adaptation, we discuss that a lot. We discuss those kind of things a lot, especially within the ISD, within the NADP. We talk about adaptation, evolution, and what would drive it, because there has to be certain things that would drive that evolutionary need or that adaptation to, first of all, be able to stand on two legs, to be able to walk on two legs, to be able to run on two legs, to have uh, the front paws not like a dog's paws, but more like a human's hands or like a raccoon's hands or things like that. Um, and there's a lot to it to be able to climb trees, to become more arboreal. Um, to There's cases where they seem to work as packs. There's cases where they uh, seem to there seems to only be one of them. There's a whole lot of things. I mean, we're trying to gather information and gather data. So kind of to plug a little bit of the NADP stuff, if you've got information, if you've got physical evidence that you want to share with, you know, a group that's really, really trying to make a difference, that's really trying to gather information in the hopes to be able to help people, reach out to the NADP because we really want to help. We really do. That's
That
our
is
sole
correct.
purpose. That is our sole purpose, is to gather the information so that we can do better to help people who are being affected by these things, like Dakotah was. The next kid down the street who might be encountering these things, maybe with the right information, we can figure out how to help or what to do. So it's important to both of us. It's important to all the members of the NADP. If you've got information, if you've got evidence, if you've got a story to tell, get with one of us. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be Dakotah. It can be anybody within the NADP, and just work with us because we'll do what we can to help you. Dakotah, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on what happened with the pit bull?
Okay, Rob. So one thing I do want to cover real quick before I get into that is you were talking about motive on why these things would show themselves. Um, for those
That's
who
true.
don't know zoology very well, mammals in particularly, once people start to infiltrate their forests and start to make it a concrete jungle instead, you will see things like bears come into cities to find food. You'll find deer coming into cities to find food. I absolutely think that this is part of the issue on why they have become aggressive, first of all. And I do think that, of course, that's not going to be every benefactor. However, I do absolutely believe it has something to do with it, at least at times, because there would be no logical reason for them to show up as much as they are now. Um, and getting into my final encounter, um, I want to give a little bit of backstory. So I went on my first Dogman hunt completely by myself. Well, not completely by myself. Me and one other dude went unarmed into the woods. Now let me back that up just a little bit. The area we were in was the Fort Leonard Wood area of Missouri, so St. Robert, Waynesville area. So what we encountered in there was something so intelligent it made the other guy, who was not a believer at all, doesn't even believe in ghosts, it made him freak out and want to charge out of the woods. Now, what we encountered there, which ended up I catching on video, because it followed me home. See, what happened is that we were out there and it was pretty daylight, and then in about the 45 minutes we got into the woods, I was looking for prints, I was looking for hair. There was already a report coming from this road that was actually featured on a news station. I think it's called the Eagle or the Talon or something like that, from southern Missouri. So we went out there knowing that we were going to be in danger. We were unarmed. I didn't want to pose a threat to it, but I also didn't want to go completely unarmed. And unfortunately, that's the way that we had to go. So we got out there, and about 30 minutes in, it starts to get real dark out of nowhere. I mean, out of nowhere. Not even the regular time for it to get dark. And that's when the strangeness started happening. I got this feeling, and I looked over at the guy with me. I said, Quan, we're not alone. We're being watched. It's not here to stalk us. But I can tell you right now, we're being watched. And if we make the wrong move and head in the wrong direction towards its lair, towards its cubs, towards anything like that, we're going to be lunch meat. He said, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. About that time, something ran right past us, doing every bit of 80 miles an hour running. I mean, it had to have. I almost couldn't see it, but I felt it. It blew a wind past me, and I mean, just probably 4 to 6 feet from me. It run past me. I could not see it coming, and I could not see it going. But when it was right next to me, I seen the blur, and that was every bit of 6 to 8 feet tall. It was slightly hunched, and that's why I say 6 to 8, because standing tall, it'd probably be 8 or 9. But in the sprint that it was running in, it was kind of hunched a little. And it ran past us, and he about fell over backwards, the guy that was with me. And he's like, what the hell is that? And I go on to be like, look, if you run right now, you're going to get us both killed. It is watching us out of curiosity, and that was its warning to not go any further. It didn't want us going any further, because every time I tried to walk in one direction, it would run in front of me. And it would snap things and would throw things, and it was starting to get a little irritated that we were there. Especially since that Quan was being so loud. And which, I'm not friends with this guy anymore, but it's safe to say that if he hadn't listened to me, we wouldn't be here right now. Now go on to the video. I lived in the Waynesville area of the Fort Leonard Wood area, and I just moved back in with my kids, my second child's mom. And one day at 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think it was spring of 24, it might have been fall, one of the two, I totally caught this footage. See, what happened on why I was recording in the first place is that the weekend before I came back home, our dog that had mental disabilities, and that's putting it lightly, he's not harmful in any way, he won't even bite as far as playfulness, got accused of jumping the fence and attacking that pit bull in the video. However, that's not what happened. He just wanted to play. He just wanted friends. He just wanted to play. They had a toy out back, and that's what was going on. He wanted to play with the toy with them and make friends. They called the cops on him and sent him to doggy jail for the weekend. Well, come Monday, I'm there. Or Sunday or Monday, I was there. And I started recording the neighbor's dog directly next to us, right? Because he had jumped the fence on the back side of the property and was running side by side with the other big dog that was, inside the fence. So they run back and forth, run back and forth, run back and forth. All of a sudden, the pit bull stops and just looks right at this bush right next to him. And I mean, the edited version of the video has a lot of it cut out. Unfortunately, the person that edited it is no longer with the North American Dogman project, and they did not do a very good job of editing it. However, I will try to work on getting something figured out for that, um, so that you can see how serious this situation was. See, and then okay, so it started to run back and forth with that dog again. All of a sudden, it stops and puts it back to the bush, and that's when I seen it. Two 5 foot long, black bipedal arms, 5 digits, midnight black with talons, reached up and grabbed this dog. And when I mean it grabbed it, it put it in its suplex. So under the rib cage, it had both arms locked, and it sucked the dog, 110-pound pit bull, so fast into that bush, I almost missed it. And I thought I didn't capture it with the camera, but I did. And this makes it the only true dogman attack ever recorded on footage to another animal. And I caught it in midday. And see what I think happened is on the other side of that house was another neighbor's house, and they like to feed sweet corn to the deer. So there's this, I don't know if you call it a flock or a pack or what, or migration, but there was a pack of 12 deer that would come up 3 times a day at least to come eat sweet corn from the front yard. And this is a suburban area, so everybody drives slow. Everybody's aware of it, you know. Well, the day before the attack, it was my first day home. And I noticed that I seen all 12 of them that morning, and that night they didn't come back for a very, very long time. And this spooked me because they had a schedule, something that they don't break. And all of a sudden, 6 of them are missing. One comes back with a busted rear leg. And it was out of hunting season at this point. And I think that really pissed that dog man off because, truthfully, I feel like they're a guardian to an extent. Maybe he was guarding his food source, or maybe he was guarding it because there's a more spiritual element to it. Whatever it is, it's not supernatural. There's motive there. And when that dog recognized that the deer that you don't see in the video, that's actually in the bush with the dog man or around the dog man, it actually pops out after the dog is thrown out of the bush, and you can hear to my ear, not on video, but you can hear this dog whining like he was getting the hell beat out of it. No claws involved, because when the dog came back flying 8 feet through the air, hit the ground and rolled several times and jumped the fence to get back into its yard, this deer pops out. Well, not only does this deer pop out, but it was like the air was suddenly easier to breathe. And I truly think that it was sending a message to that pit bull of mind your damn business and don't mess with my deer. And it was just the craziest experience because if you see the unedited version, I had to have it edited because I was cussing far too much in the video, and I sounded horrible, to be honest with you. It's just insane because, you know, there's this deer that pops out right after this happens, and all of a sudden it's like everything's fine again. That night I walked out there to that tree line and I brought pork chops with me I'd got from a food pantry. And I tried to get Dogman to take this pork chop out of my hand. And I could feel it there, but it kept its distance from me, like 30, 40 feet distance, and it would not come out. But I was 100% trying to lay my eyes on the Dogman that was now haunting and hunting my home territory. The original reason I had reached out to the NADP originally is when I recorded that footage and sent it to Jody. I made sure to tell him that when we were out investigating before the video, and we was right outside of town, the reason I was investigating that is because there was a yard where these little itty bitty kids would run and play, and it runs right to the tree line, you know. So as a father, I heard about the encounter and I had to investigate. I had to make sure there was no threat towards that child. Um, and nothing ever came of it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to go back. I'm willing to face it again. And that's actually in my plans at some point is to go back. And this time I'm going to record the whole thing. Um, Not only for the NADP, but my purpose, the reason I made Hellhound Heights in the first place, and now I've launched a second group called Black Fang Dogman Research and Response Unit, um, is to make people not feel alone, and that to let them know that we don't think that they're crazy. We know that they're telling the truth. We know that there's these things out there. And hell, the government even knows that they're out there. Everybody knows that they're out there. But most people refuse to think that they're real because you never lived in the woods. You never lived in the forest. You never lived near tree lines or this or that. People that were born and raised in a city and spend their whole life in the city will never know what really goes on in the woods. And for them to discredit people like us who actually go out there and capture these things, it's a little frustrating. But there are people out there that 100% I stand up for. And the last time I talked about my Dogman encounter in the tree was with Marcus Ellis, right after I shot my last episode of Hellhound Heights. And I shared with him just that story, and it had me crying my eyes out. Because I remember how much fear I felt and how invaded I felt. So, um, with that being said, guys, I do have to do my part on my channel and say go check out Hellhound Heights, like and subscribe. And if you guys are interested in joining Black Fang Dogman Research and Response Unit, go to Facebook, look up the name. In the bio, there is a link for a website. Go on there to page 4 and fill out the contact form, and I will get a hold of you pretty quickly. And then we can talk about what part you can play as a researcher or a field investigator. My goal for Black Fang is to do exactly what I was trying to do in that forest that day, and that is protect the children, protect the civilians. That's all I've got.
That's pretty good. Let me say this. You keep hearing us talk about the NADP, that is the North American Dogman Project. If you had an encounter with Dogman, or believe you may have had an encounter with Dogman, whether you believe it's physical, spiritual, whatever it might be, reach out to us. You can get a hold of us at the NADP website, which I think is NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com. You can reach out to any of the different members, just like with a lot of the other, like the Bigfoot groups and stuff like that. If you reach out via email, it will go to someone who is very dedicated now. Now, someone who's very dedicated to making sure that that gets into the right hands, and that someone will get with you and answer and get back with you quickly. Um, Again, the NADP is really dedicated to trying to answer a lot of the questions surrounding the Dogman, as what it is, why they're here, where they came from, and primarily what we can do to help people who are experiencing these things. So don't be afraid to reach out to us. So, Dakotah, it was a ball having you on here. I am definitely going to have you back because there are a lot. I know there are going to be people asking, well, what about all the paranormal stuff that he kind of hinted to? So we're going to have you back on, and we're going to talk about some of the paranormal stuff that happened in between all of these things, if you're up for it.
Absolutely. You've got me the first available chance we can schedule up. You'll have me back. And I do
All
want to
right.
say one thing to our audience is that once again, you guys are not alone. And for those of you that are 100% on your encounters, look, I'm here to be your friend. I'm not here to make publicity off of you. I'm here to help people So is Rob. So is the North American Dogman Project. We want to help people to feel safe with what has happened to them. And if it's still happening, we would like to investigate. We would like to do something further to try and help as any way we can. So definitely, please get a hold of us. You can find me on at Hellhound Heights on Facebook, Black Fang Dogman Research on Facebook. You can find Rob on Facebook, and the North American Dogman Project is on there as well.
Absolutely. So hang on 1 second, Dakotah. I'll be right back. I'm going to wrap this puppy up. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Monstrous, the podcast. And remember, as I always say, make sure to lock your doors, lock your windows, check in the closet, check under the bed, because monsters are real and you never know when they're going to be back. Everybody have a great night and thanks. And we'll see you again next time.